I am hearing the flight announcement echoing through Concourse C at Seattle-Tacoma Airport, slicing through the stillness like a thin blade when a trembling child's voice rises above the crowd. Please, someone help. My mom won't wake up. Ethan Caldwell hears the crying before he sees where it comes from. Standing frozen as the commercial plane he was supposed to board slowly rolls away from the gate. All because an online meeting stretched 17 extra minutes. 17 minutes that made him miss an important trip to New York. 17 minutes that turned his entire morning into a sequence of disappointments. But in that instant, when the cry rings out again, those 17 minutes become something else, an odd intervention of fate. A little girl, about 6 years old, with natural curls bouncing wildly as she runs, her brown cheeks streaked with tears, her pale pink dress vivid against the polished white floor of the terminal, darts straight toward Ethan, her small hands reaching out as if clinging to the last thread of hope. Sir, please, my mom won't wake up. Without a second thought, Ethan lets his expensive leather briefcase fall to the ground and crouches down to her level. Easy now, sweetheart. Where is your mom? The girl hiccups through her sobs, a trembling finger pointing toward the area near Gate C, where a woman lies motionless on the cold tile. No one is helping her. A few people are filming on their phones. Others step aside, walking briskly as if another person's misfortune were something contagious. Ethan inhales sharply, a cold anger running down his spine as he shoots to his feet, grabs the child's hand, and runs. The woman lies on her side, her breathing so faint it takes effort to notice, her tangled brown hair covering part of her pale face. It is Harper Lane. Her thin jacket has slipped off her shoulder, her purse spilled open with a few crumpled bills and an old doll scattered on the floor. Ethan kneels, checks her pulse, and his expression darkens instantly. How long has she been out? I don't know. Mommy was standing. Then she fell. She won't open her eyes. Mia Lane, he assumes that must be her name, clings to his arm. Her eyes filled with the primal terror of a child afraid of losing her mother. Ethan lifts Harper into his arms, firm but gentle. We're moving now. He turns to a frozen airport employee. Call emergency services, right now. His voice is sharp, commanding. The employee jolts and fumbles for his radio. Ethan strides forward, holding Harper against his chest to keep her warm, while Mia runs beside him, crying so hard her breath breaks apart. Sir, is my mom going to die? The question cuts into Ethan like a small knife. No, I'm not letting that happen. They race through the gleaming terminal, past startled looks and raised phones and people who only know how to watch. When the ambulance siren wails, outside the glass doors, Ethan knows that those 17 delayed minutes are about to change everything in his life, though he has no idea this is only the beginning. And if you are listening to this and feel something inside you being stirred, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel, like and share this video so we can keep bringing heartfelt stories every day. And if you don't mind, could you tell me where you're watching from? Leave a comment below, let us know which corner of the world this story has reached. We treasure every word you share with us. The terminal doors swing open as Ethan rushes outside, carrying Harper as if she were the only thing left that mattered. The cold Seattle wind lashes across his face, but the worry in his chest is sharper than any chill. Mia stumbles at his side, clutching his pant leg, her tiny legs struggling to keep up, her breath ragged with fear. The ambulance pulls up, red lights flashing across Harper's pale skin. Before the paramedics even step out, Ethan calls out, his voice cutting like a command. She's unconscious, weak pulse, unresponsive. Please get her inside now. One of the emergency technicians nods quickly, unfolding a stretcher and helping Ethan lower Harper onto it, though his hand stays on her shoulder until they slide her into the vehicle. Mia grips the back of his vest, her entire body trembling like an autumn leaf caught in a fierce wind. Please don't leave my mom. Sir, she's going to die, isn't she? Ethan bends down, one arm pulling Mia close, his other hand resting on her quivering head. Listen to me, your mom is not dead. But we need to move fast. I'm going with both of you. I'm not leaving. The little girl looks up at him, her eyes swollen and storm-struck, and something in his chest tightens in a way he cannot fully explain. He lifts Mia into the ambulance, buckles her into a seat himself. I'll be right here, next to your mom. You're safe. As the paramedics begin checking Harper's blood pressure, heart, and pain response, Ethan stands pressed against the stretcher, watching every number on the small monitor. Every weak flicker makes the vein in his temple throb. Her blood pressure is very low. She's severely exhausted, the nurse mutters with a frown. Mia sobs harder at those words, clutching Ethan's hand with desperate force. "Sir, is she going to wake up? She promised she'd take me to the park today. She will wake up. I promise." Ethan says the words without knowing if he completely believes them, but the promise is the only thing holding Mia together. He brushes her tangled curls aside and gently pulls her into his chest. The ambulance jolts as it begins to move, its siren wailing through the airport road. Ethan watches Harper lying there, her face colorless, her breathing thin, her hand limp at her side. She looks so fragile that it chokes him. A young woman, far too thin, wearing old clothes, worn-out shoes, hands calloused from work, lying now at the edge of life. A cold, rational part of Ethan tells him he doesn't know her, he has no obligation, that this is nothing but an accident. But another part, the part of him he thought had died long ago, rises fiercely. He cannot let them go. He cannot walk away like the people who stood and watched. A hard sob pulls him back. Mia buries her tear-wet face into his shirt. "Sir, if she doesn't wake up, what do I do?" Ethan places his large hand on her small back, rubbing gently as if it were something he had done all his life. "You won't have to do anything alone. I'm here." Mia's eyes quiver as if his words are the only rope keeping her from falling into a dark void. The ambulance speeds down the boulevard toward Seattle General Hospital. Ethan looks at Harper again. Each time the vehicle bumps, her body shifts slightly, so weak she seems like she could be knocked over by a strong breeze. And in that moment, Ethan Caldwell, a man who never intervenes in anyone's life, a man who keeps a safe distance from the world, forces himself to face a strange truth. He is afraid. Afraid that by the time they reach the hospital, it will be too late. Afraid that Harper's eyes will never open again. Afraid that Mia's cries will become the cries of a child who has lost her mother. Ethan grips the rail of Harper's stretcher tightly. "Don't give up," he whispers, unsure whether he is speaking to Harper or to himself. "Don't go." The ambulance races through an intersection, siren slicing through the wind. The lives of 3 strangers, pulled together by 17 minutes of delay, are beginning to turn in a direction none of them could have imagined. Most people think it is simply a terrible day, but for them, it is the beginning of something fate had been waiting far too long to set in motion. When the ambulance stopped at the emergency entrance of Seattle General Hospital, the medical team rushed Harper inside, and Ethan, carrying Mia in his arms, followed closely beside the stretcher as the cold white lights of the hallway cast a stark glow across the pale face of the unconscious woman, making the air feel even heavier. "We have to take her into the recovery unit right away. The patient's blood pressure is extremely low, possibly due to severe exhaustion or prolonged malnutrition," the on-call physician said quickly, before pushing through the double doors, and Harper disappeared from sight. Mia clung to the back of Ethan's vest with both hands, her small fingers icy with fear. "Sir, I want to stay with my mom." Ethan bent down, his hand placed gently on her back, his voice dropping to a patient, steady tone. "They're helping her right now. We have to let them work." A nurse approached with a clipboard. "Are you the patient's family?" Ethan glanced at Mia, then looked back at the nurse. "For now, consider me the one responsible. Then we'll need you to sign the admission forms and pay the initial deposit before we begin treatment." "Not a problem," he answered so quickly, the nurse hesitated for a second. He set Mia on a nearby bench and stepped toward the intake counter. When the hospital clerk handed him a thick stack of documents, Ethan signed without hesitation, each signature sharp and controlled. "The initial deposit is $5,000, the clerk said. Ethan pulled out his black card and set it on the counter without blinking. "Run it." The clerk looked momentarily startled, her eyes flicking to his tailored vest and composed demeanor, but she asked no further questions. No one there knew who he was. Ethan preferred it that way. When he returned to the waiting area, he saw Mia sitting curled into herself, her small frame pressed tight as if she wished she could disappear. He sat beside her, placing his warm hand gently over her soft curls, stroking them with quiet reassurance. "Mia, are you hungry?" She shook her head, eyes still red. "I just want my mom." A simple sentence, yet it pierced something deep inside his chest. Ethan slipped off his vest and draped it around her shoulders. The garment was far too large, nearly swallowing her tiny frame, but it held a steady warmth, something she desperately needed. Mia looked up at him, gratitude mingled with despair. "Sir, is my mom going to die?" Ethan took a deep breath and kept his voice level. "No, you heard me earlier. Your mom just needs to rest, and the doctors are helping her get better." Mia leaned against him, her breathing slowly evening out as exhaustion pulled at her eyelids. Ethan let her sleep against his side, his arm circling softly around her to keep her from sliding down. As distant announcements echoed through the hospital and the hallway grew quieter with every passing minute, Mia finally surrendered to sleep, her face buried in his vest, her small hands gripping the edges of the fabric like it was the only anchor left in a world that had suddenly fallen apart. Ethan looked down at her small, fragile face, and a strange feeling spread through his chest protection, responsibility neither of which had any logical root, yet both powerful enough that he could not bring himself to leave for even a moment. A nurse emerged from the recovery unit. "Are you the one who came in with Harper Lane?" Ethan nodded. "How is she?" "She's in a state of severe exhaustion. We've given her fluids and stabilized her blood pressure, but she shows signs of long-term nutritional deficiency. She'll need to be monitored for at least 24 hours. Ethan gripped the armrest tightly. "Will she wake up?" "It's possible, but her body has endured far too much. The best thing for her now is rest and recovery." He nodded, though his eyes tightened at the words malnutrition, exhaustion, prolonged. No one ended up in that condition if life had been kind to them. Mia shifted slightly, and Ethan immediately adjusted his arm to keep her from falling. She was asleep, deeply, her small hand still fisted in the fabric of his vest, as if afraid that letting go would cause the world to abandon her entirely. He looked at her for a long moment, and then at the closed door of the recovery room. He did not know why he was still here, why he could not stand up and walk away the way he always had before. He only knew one thing. This mother and child were fighting the world alone, and tonight he would not let them do it by themselves. In the cold white space of the hospital, bathed in fluorescent light and the sharp scent of antiseptic, Ethan Caldwell, a man in his mid-30s who had long convinced himself that his heart had frozen over, felt something shift quietly, slowly, but undeniably inside him, and he no longer wished to push it aside. A soft white glow spread across the ceiling of the recovery room as Harper opened her eyes, the world around her blurring as though it were being pieced back together one fragment at a time. The steady beeping of a heart monitor pulsed somewhere nearby, and the strong scent of antiseptic told her it took several seconds to understand where she was. Her body felt heavy as stone, her mind spinning, yet the first thing she thought of was not herself. "Mia." Her voice was hoarse and barely more than a breath, so faint she could hardly hear it. Harper struggled to lift the IV line in her arm, trying to push herself upright. Panic thudded through her chest when she did not see her daughter. The door opened before she could call out again. Ethan stepped inside, holding the vest Mia had slept in all night. His eyes met hers instantly, sharp but carrying a relief he didn't bother hiding. "You're awake!" Harper blinked at him in confusion, her voice trembling with fear. Where is she? Where's my daughter?" "Mia's asleep in the waiting room. She's safe." Harper exhaled as though life returned to her, but the next moment worry flooded her again. She tried to remove the IV line, her movements clumsy but determined. "I have to go. I can't pay for any of this. We can't stay." Ethan moved quickly, his hand lightly circling her wrist, firm enough to stop her reckless movements. "Harper, you can't go anywhere. Your body isn't stable." "I don't have a choice." She tried to pull her hand back, but she was too weak. "You don't understand. I can't let them charge me and send me to collections. I have to take care of Mia. I need to go home." Ethan tightened his jaw, his voice low and absolute. "I already paid." Harper froze as though cold water had been thrown over her. "You, what?" "I covered everything. You don't owe anything." For a heartbeat, Harper's eyes widened in astonishment before fear and defensiveness surged in their place. "No, I can't take your money. I don't even know you. You collapsed in the middle of an airport," Ethan said, each word cutting cleanly through the wall she was trying to build. "You were so exhausted the doctor said another delay could have been dangerous. Were you planning to walk out of here just to collapse again?" Harper bit her lip, shame and desperation knotting in her throat. "You don't understand. I don't want to owe anyone, especially someone like you. Ethan narrowed his eyes. Someone like me is what, exactly? Harper clutched the blanket, her voice unsteady. Successful, wealthy, someone who has nothing to do with me. People like you don't help for free. Ethan inhaled slowly, trying to quiet the unfamiliar sting her words caused. This isn't free. I helped because your daughter was terrified. Because I couldn't stand there and watch you both fall apart. I will pay you back. Harper. Ethan said her name for the first time, slow, steady, unmistakably grounding, forcing her to meet his eyes. You can't pay anyone back if you die from exhaustion. Harper went still. His words pierced the truth she feared most but never voiced. Silence stretched between them before she turned her face away. I just need to go home. I'm fine. No, you're not. Ethan dragged a chair close to her bed and sat, his voice no longer commanding but resolute in a different way. You are severely depleted, sleep-deprived, underfed, overwhelmed, I heard the doctor. If you leave now, you're putting your life at risk. Harper shut her eyes as tears slipped out before she could stop them. She brushed them away quickly. I don't have a choice. I have to work. I have to pay rent. I have to take Mia to school. I can't lie here. You will lie here today, Ethan answered, with no room for negotiation. And tomorrow if the doctors say you must. I will take care of everything else. You don't have to do that. I know. Ethan looked at her, his expression firm but softer than anything she had expected from him. But I'm going to. Harper sagged back, her strength draining away as resistance melted into bone-deep exhaustion. She turned her head slightly, her voice so small it barely reached him. Why are you doing this? Ethan was silent for a moment before answering in a low, honest tone that made her too afraid to blink. Because no one should have to fight alone when they're about to fall. Harper turned her face into the pillow, letting her tears sink into the white fabric. She no longer pushed back. And for the first time in months, her body allowed itself to let go. Ethan gently pulled the blanket higher over her and stepped away as quietly as he could so he would not wake Mia outside. As he looked at Harper lying there exhausted, fragile, but safe, he understood that this was no longer a momentary act of help. He had stepped into their lives, and he had no intention of stepping out. The Seattle afternoon sank beneath a heavy layer of gray clouds as Harper was finally discharged from the hospital, her body still weak, her steps unsteady. But the thought of taking Mia home pushed her to stay upright. Ethan walked beside her, one hand gently supporting her elbow in case she faltered, while Mia held tightly onto her mother's hand, a mixture of relief and fear flickering through her small fingers, as though letting go might make something terrible happen all over again. When they reached the parking lot, Harper froze at the sight of Ethan's black luxury SUV waiting for them, and she swallowed the wave of discomfort rising in her throat. You don't have to drive us. I can call a taxi. Ethan opened the back door, his voice leaving no room for argument. You just got discharged after collapsing in an airport. You're not taking a taxi. Harper opened her mouth to protest, but Mia had already climbed inside, sitting still and obedient as if she believed the slightest misstep might cause her mother to fall again, and Harper could only sigh and follow. The SUV pulled away from Seattle General, merging onto Rainier Avenue, the city outside humming with noise, while inside the vehicle a taut silence stretched like a drawn string. Harper kept her eyes on her hands, trying to hide the steady burn of shame rising within her. Ethan drove, his gaze fixed on the road but drifting occasionally to the rearview mirror, catching glimpses of the faint blue veins on her wrist, the way the hospital coat hung too loosely over her thin shoulders, the way she bit her lip every time the car jolted as though holding herself together required everything she had left. When they entered Rainier Valley, the scenery shifted completely. Low buildings with peeling paint, windows patched with tape, small shops with faded signs, potholes scattered along the street. Harper said nothing, but her fingers tightened until her knuckles turned white. Ethan noticed all of it, and the discomfort that rose in him had nothing to do with the neighborhood itself, but with the knowledge that these two lived here. The car stopped in front of a worn 3-story apartment building with chipped paint, rusted railings, and windows fogged from the inside. One door on the first floor hung crooked on its hinges, half open as if it had long given up resisting the weather. Harper inhaled deeply. Thank you for driving us. You can go now. Ethan turned off the engine but didn't open his door. He looked at the building, then at Harper. You live here? Harper pressed her lips together. It's temporary. I'm saving to move. Mia tugged her mother's sleeve, pointing toward the steps. Mommy, the front door got stuck again. I had to kick it twice to open it. Ethan turned sharply, his expression tightening as if he had just heard something deeply unacceptable. Kick it? Mia nodded. Yes, because the lock is broken. The landlord said he can't fix it yet. Harper quickly shook her head and took her daughter's hand. It's fine. We're used to it. Ethan stepped out of the car without another word. Harper watched him, a mixture of embarrassment and confusion knotting in her chest. When he followed them up the steps, she tried to stop him. Ethan, you don't need to go up. I'm really okay. Thank you for everything you've done, but you don't have to worry any further. He paused, then spoke in a low, even voice. I'll walk you to your door, then I'll leave. Mia ran ahead and kicked the warped door with both feet. The first kick did nothing. The second made it swing open with a long, scraping groan. Ethan stood still, staring at the scene with a silence that wasn't ordinary silence. It was the silence of impact, of something in him shifting sharply. Inside, the apartment was dim, carrying a faint, musty smell. The living room was half the size of one of his company's small meeting rooms. An old sofa sagged in the middle. A few cardboard boxes served as makeshift tables, and the tiny kitchen barely had space for one person to stand. Harper glanced around the room she worked so hard to keep tidy each night, humiliation sweeping through her as she realized he was seeing all of it. It's a little messy. I'm sorry. This isn't your fault, Ethan said, but his voice held a coldness he wasn't directing at her, as though he were swallowing an anger aimed at something invisible. Harper tried to stand straighter, though her breath trembled. Ethan noticed. You need to rest. Let me help you inside. No, She managed only a single step before her knees buckled, and Ethan caught her before her frail body hit the cold floor. Harper. His voice softened into something undeniably worried, no longer masked. You can't keep living like this. Harper closed her eyes, her voice barely a whisper of defeat. I don't have a choice. Ethan looked around the dim, cramped apartment, listened to the wind whistling through a crack in the door, saw the old stained rug where Mia sat arranging her toys, and then he looked back at Harper, a woman trying to carry an entire collapsing world with a body that had nearly given out. There is a choice, he said slowly, each word deliberate. You just haven't allowed yourself to see it. Harper opened her eyes, fatigue dimming them but curiosity flickering beneath her fear. What do you mean? Ethan straightened, his gaze darkening the way it did whenever he made a decision that couldn't be undone. Tomorrow, I'm coming back. Harper stiffened. For what? Ethan looked at her with eyes so certain they sent a chill down her spine. To take you toward a life better than this one. And Harper understood, with terrifying clarity, that from that moment forward, her life and Mia's would never be the same. The next morning, when Seattle's sunlight was still a faint blur behind the gray clouds, Harper woke to the sound of a firm, quiet knock. She sat up, her body aching after a day of total exhaustion. Mia was playing on the floor with her old doll, and she looked up. Mommy, it's Mr. Ethan. Harper froze, her heart skipping. She wasn't ready for anyone to see this clutter again. Wasn't ready for those sharp eyes that seemed to cut straight through her defenses. But Mia was already at the door, pulling it open a crack. Ethan stood there in a long coat, his expression calm, though his eyes swept the apartment as though cataloging every detail before stepping inside. Good morning. He crouched to give Mia a soft smile, then straightened and looked toward Harper. She tugged her worn sweater tighter around herself as he entered the tiny apartment. She stood to the side, flustered and uncertain. You're here, early. I told you I'd come back. Ethan's gaze held no questions, no hesitation, only the certainty of someone who always followed through. Harper tried to sound composed. Thank you for yesterday, but you really don't have to. Harper. He set a paper bag on the table, his voice gentle enough not to frighten Mia but firm enough to silence Harper. I'm here for something serious. Harper sat in the only usable chair, her hands clasped tight in her lap. What is it? Ethan looked around again as though assessing the fragile balance she was trying so hard to maintain. After a quiet moment, he said, You need a stable job, a real one, something with steady pay, with benefits, with set hours, and I can help you get it. Harper stiffened. I'm not taking money from you. Ethan raised an eyebrow, almost amused by her insistence. No one mentioned money. I'm talking about work. She frowned, confused. What do you mean? Caldwell Tech needs an administrative support position in the research department. Filing, organizing documents, managing emails, coordinating schedules, good salary, stable environment. I want you to take the job. Harper stared at him as though he had spoken in a foreign language. Why me? Ethan crossed his arms lightly, leaning against the table. Because you're smart, careful, and you can survive circumstances worse than anything most of my employees have ever faced. And because you need it. Harper shook her head immediately. I don't have a degree. I've never worked in an office. I've been a waitress, a janitor, a temporary cashier. I know all of that. Ethan cut in, his voice low but free of judgment. I read your old job applications. You worked 3 different jobs in 1 year just to stay afloat. You didn't give up. That's what my company needs more than any resume. Harper froze, the vulnerability of being seen so clearly, making it hard to breathe. You looked at my applications? When? Last night, Ethan answered plainly. I needed to know whether I was about to make a stupid decision, and... You think it's not? Harper whispered. I think Caldwell Tech needs someone exactly like you. She let out a small, humorless laugh. And if I say no? Ethan bent slightly, meeting her eyes directly, his gaze so deep and certain it made her spine tighten. Then you'll keep burning yourself out. You'll keep living in this apartment. You'll keep raising Mia in unsafe conditions. Do you really want that? Harper bit down on her trembling lip, his words striking the most painful truth inside her. Not the poverty, not the exhaustion, but the fear that she couldn't give Mia a better life. Her voice cracked, her eyes stinging. I don't want this, but I'm scared. Ethan's tone softened. Scared of change? Scared of failing? Scared of owing me something? She inhaled shakily and nodded. Ethan exhaled softly, a faint smile touching his mouth. Harper, taking a job doesn't put you in my debt. You'll work, you'll earn, you'll contribute like anyone else. I'm only opening the door. Whether you walk through it, that's up to you. At that moment, Mia ran over and wrapped her arms around her mother's leg, her innocent gaze lifting from Ethan to Harper. Mommy, work with Mr. Ethan. I don't want you to faint again. The words were small, simple, but they sliced deep an undeniable truth Harper could not turn away from. She looked at Ethan, her tired eyes no longer avoiding his. If I say yes, when do I start? Ethan crossed his arms again, this time with open satisfaction. Monday. I'll have someone pick you up. Flexible hours for the first week while you adjust. Harper blinked. You already arranged everything? I never offer anything I haven't prepared for, he said. Slowly, so slowly it barely counted as movement, Harper nodded. A tiny gesture, yet one that shifted the entire path ahead of her. Ethan looked at her then, not with his usual cool intensity, but with something warmer, something that felt startlingly close to relief. Good, he said quietly. Harper Lane, welcome to Caldwell Tech. And Harper didn't know why, but in that moment, warmth spread across her chest as though, for the first time in years, a real door had finally opened for her. Harper stepped into the lobby of Caldwell Tech on Monday morning, with her heart pounding twice its usual pace, the towering glass building reflecting the pale gray Seattle sky, while inside everything gleamed with a modern brightness, so overwhelming she had to look down at her inexpensive shoes just to steady herself. The outfit she had chosen, a worn white blouse, ironed as flat as she could make it, and a pair of black pants bought from a discount rack, made her feel as if she had walked into a world she did not belong to. Pulling at the strap of her bag, Harper approached the reception desk. Hello, I'm Harper Lane. Today is my first day in the research department. The receptionist smiled warmly and typed quickly. Yes, Miss Lane, you're on the list. Someone will come get you shortly. Harper stepped aside, her fingers twisting the edge of her blouse. A familiar mix of nerves and fear rising inside her, the fear of being judged, dismissed, or exposed as not good enough. But what she didn't know was that from the 26th floor, behind the tinted glass of an executive office, a man was watching her. Ethan stood there, arms crossed, his cool gaze fixed on her with an attention even he couldn't explain. Harper looked anxious but determined, small but trying to stand tall, and the simple fact that she showed up tightened something in Ethan's chest in a way he wasn't ready to acknowledge. He did not appear. He did not want to make her first day harder, but his eyes never left her as she fumbled with her new badge and smiled shyly at the receptionist. A female manager stepped out of the elevator, brisk yet polite. "Harper Lane, I'm Sophie, head of the department. Please follow me." Harper nodded and followed Sophie down a long hallway lined with glass walls, revealing teams of employees working at a pace Harper couldn't even imagine matching. Sophie spoke as she walked. "It's fast here, but don't worry, you have a week to adjust. We need someone to organize files, input data, handle emails, and support the research teams when needed." Harper listened, trying to absorb it all, her mind spinning like someone trying to balance in fast-moving water. They stopped at a small desk by a large window, and Sophie smiled. "This is your station. Computer, documents, instructions, they're all in that folder. If you need anything, come to me." When Sophie left, Harper sat down, her palms damp. She opened the computer, staring at a task list longer than her fear. "Can I really do this?" she whispered to herself, her throat tightening. "Do I belong here at all?" Her answer never formed because a notification chimed. She jumped, clumsily clicking on the email. She read it once, twice, a third time, unsure she understood. She typed a reply, deleted it, typed again, deleted again. Every word felt like stepping on thin ice. Sophie's voice behind her made Harper flinch. "Everything okay?" I'm trying to get used to it." "Good. Take your time." Harper nodded, though her hands continued trembling. She worked until her back stiffened and her shoulders throbbed. Every typo flushed heat into her cheeks as if the whole office were watching, and Harper didn't know that someone truly was watching. On the top floor, Ethan stood by the glass wall, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a cup of coffee long gone cold. Every time Harper bowed her head, he saw her embarrassment. Every time she fumbled with a file, he sensed her self-blame. And what unsettled him most was not annoyance, it was the unwavering effort she poured into every task. A woman who was nearly broken but still using every last ounce of strength to stand. Late in the morning, Harper carried a stack of documents to the archive room. She didn't know where anything went, which codes matched which shelves. Turning in confusion, her hands shook so badly she dropped everything, papers scattering across the floor. She froze, then knelt to gather them, her vision blurring. Sophie entered, paused, and said gently, "It's okay. Everyone's first day looks like this." The kindness felt like a touch on an old wound. Harper bowed her head, breathing deeply to hold back tears. When her first day finally ended, she nearly dragged herself through the front lobby until she saw Mia waiting with the childcare assistant. The girl's face lit up, and she ran, throwing her arms around her mother, and in that moment Harper felt the first hint of not being alone. From across the lobby, Ethan stepped out of the elevator. He intended to leave immediately, but stopped when he saw the embrace. Harper looked up and met his eyes, and though she didn't know why, reassurance washed through her. Ethan did know why. She had survived her first day not flawlessly, not smoothly, but she hadn't quit, and that meant more to him than any successful contract. The first days at Caldwell Tech passed more slowly than Harper expected. She learned each process, each form, each term her coworkers tossed around effortlessly. But after a few days, Harper sensed a shift, not in the work, but in the eyes around her. One morning, as she stepped into the elevator, two women who had been chatting fell silent immediately. Their gazes slid over Harper from head to toe before they exchanged knowing looks. When Harper stepped out, the elevator doors closed, and whispers slipped out. She heard her name clearly. "Harper Lane. The new girl," heard the boss hired her himself. "Come on, you think someone like Caldwell just helps a stranger? Something's going on. Look how she blushes whenever he walks by." Harper stood frozen in the hallway, heat climbing her neck in a rising storm of humiliation. She hurried away, her hands trembling already. At her desk, things worsened. When the computer turned on, an internal email mistakenly forwarded popped up. It read, "Does anyone know what the new girl's connection to Ethan Caldwell is?" The words slapped her hard. She inhaled sharply but couldn't calm her chest. All morning she couldn't focus. Every step felt watched. Every small laugh in the room made her flinch. At lunch break, she grabbed her bag and rushed to the back courtyard, the quietest corner she could find. Leaning against the wall, she covered her face. Tears spilled before she could stop them. "What did I do wrong?" she whispered. but only the Seattle wind answered. She thought of everything Ethan had done, saving her at the airport, paying her hospital bill, driving her home, giving her a job she'd never dared dream of. And now people thought she couldn't even finish the thought. The courtyard door opened. Sophie stepped out with a cup of coffee. Harper wiped her tears quickly, turning away, but Sophie had already seen. "Harper, what's going on?" Harper forced a weak smile. "It's nothing. I'm not sure I fit in here." Sophie frowned. "Did someone say something to you?" Harper said nothing, and silence was enough. "Don't mind them," Sophie sighed. "People love to gossip, especially when the boss pays attention to someone new. I don't want him dragged into anything because of me. I don't want people thinking I'm leaning on him." Harper's voice cracked. "I just want to work quietly." Sophie put a supportive hand on Harper's shoulder. "Don't give up just yet. Caldwell Tech is big. This will pass." But Harper knew better. She had lived through enough whispers to know they didn't fade easily. At the end of the day, as Harper gathered her things, her phone buzzed. A message from HR. "Miss Lane, the CEO has requested to see you in the executive office." Harper froze. Not because she had never been there, but because after everything she heard today, she could think of only one explanation. This was the end. She walked through the long hallway, her shoes so quiet she barely heard them herself. She thought of Mia, of their damp apartment, of the fragile hope she'd only just begun to hold. Losing this job would send her back to the very beginning. She stopped at the office door, inhaled, and knocked softly. "Come in." Ethan's voice carried a calm weight that made her heart jump. She stepped inside, gripping the strap of her bag. Ethan stood by the glass wall, his back to her as if deep in thought. When he turned, his eyes landed instantly on her pale face. "What happened? You look like you've been crying." Harper swallowed hard. I want to resign." The air in the room froze. Ethan didn't move, didn't blink. 3 seconds passed, 3 seconds that felt like an hour. Then he walked to the desk, placed both hands on the polished surface, and looked straight at her, his voice lower than she had ever heard it. "Who did something to you?" Harper shook her head. "No one did anything. I just don't belong here. People talk. They think I have some connection to you, that I'm getting special treatment." "What exactly did they say?" Ethan asked, his voice cooling to ice. "I don't want to repeat it, and I don't want to trouble you." Ethan straightened, eyes darkening like a rising storm. "Trouble?" He let out a short, humorless laugh. "Harper, let me be perfectly clear. No one in this company has the right to make you want to quit." Harper stepped back, but Ethan stepped forward, not looming, but standing in front of her with the solidity of a shield. "I will take care of this. The gossip ends now. Anyone who comes after you or your daughter directly or indirectly will answer for it." Harper's eyes widened. "You don't have to do that. I just want peace." Ethan held her gaze for a long moment, then spoke in a quiet voice sharp enough to cut. "Harper, you are an employee of Caldwell Tech. My employee, and I don't let anyone touch what's mine." Her heart thudded off rhythm. Ethan breathed out, softer this time. "You will come to work tomorrow. I'll handle the rest. You're not alone." Harper felt her throat close, not in fear, but because for the first time in years, someone was standing beside her fiercely, without hesitation. When she left the room, Ethan turned back to the glass wall, his gaze cutting through the view of employees below with the resolve of someone who had made a decision that could not be undone. And just as he promised, those rumors would not survive another day. On Saturday morning, Harper stood in front of the new apartment Ethan had helped her find through a housing assistance program for employees facing hardship. The building nestled in a quiet neighborhood near Seward Park, only a 10-minute walk from Mia's school. The structure rose only 3 stories high, but was freshly painted and clean, without rusted railings or crooked doors like the place they had left behind. And Harper still wasn't used to the idea that life could suddenly become better. She held her daughter's hand tightly, her heart thudding as she looked at the small metal plate marked Apartment 2B, while Mia bounced beside her as if she had stepped into an entirely new world. "Mom, our house has clean carpet, and the lights work." Harper laughed, the first laugh in days that hadn't been strangled by fear. She opened the door, and the moment the hinges moved, a soft wave of relief spread across her chest. The apartment was small, Just one bedroom and a living room connected to a kitchenette, but it was bright, clean, and free of the musty smell she had endured for years. Morning light flowed in through the large window, warming the new wooden floor and making the whole space feel alive. Harper brushed her fingers along the smooth, fresh countertop, then stepped toward the window that overlooked a small park where a few people were walking their dogs and children were climbing a slide. Mia ran in circles around the living room, her curls bouncing with every step, before she hopped onto the sofa that had come with the place. "Mom, I don't see any roaches." Harper laughed again, but when she bent to hug her daughter, her eyes burned with emotion. No roaches. No door that needed to be kicked open twice. No shouting, neighbors waking Mia in the middle of the night. For the first time in years, Harper felt like she had a real home. That afternoon, she placed their belongings into new cupboards, each item settling into place like a quiet promise that life was shifting for the better. In the corner of the kitchen, she noticed the small note Ethan had left when he sent the keys through Sophie the day before. "If you need anything, call me." Harper had read that note at least 10 times, yet she kept it pinned under a magnet on the refrigerator, a reminder that for the first time in her life, someone was standing behind her without asking for anything in return. As evening settled, mother and daughter stood by the window watching the streetlights flicker to life, and Mia leaned against Harper's shoulder. "Mom, this house is so pretty. I don't hear anyone yelling. I like it here." Harper placed a gentle hand along her daughter's back. "Yes, sweetheart, I like it too. We'll be safe here." Mia tilted her face up, her eyes wide. "Is it because of Mr. Ethan, Mom?" Harper paused for a breath. "Yes, but we helped too. I worked hard, and you've been so good. We deserve a better place." Mia smiled brightly and ran off to arrange her dolls on the small shelf Ethan had given them, the only gift Harper had accepted, after he insisted it was just an old hand-me-down from the youth research team, for a colleague's kid. That night, Harper cooked a simple dinner pasta, Mia's favorite, and they ate at the small table under warm golden light that painted soft shadows across the wall. Harper couldn't remember a meal that had ever felt this peaceful. After tucking Mia into bed, Harper sank onto the sofa, releasing a long breath she had been holding for weeks. She looked around at the apartment, at every small corner that reminded her of one simple truth. Their life was changing. Slowly, but genuinely. At that moment, her phone buzzed softly. She glanced at the screen. "Ethan, is the new place all right?" The short message made her chest flutter. She typed back after a hesitant pause. "It's good. Thank you for helping." His reply came almost instantly. "I just opened the door. You're the one who walked through." Harper set the phone down, a warmth spreading through her in a way she couldn't quite name. The next morning, while walking Mia to school, Harper noticed a difference so sharp it almost felt unreal. Mia skipped happily, no longer shrinking back at loud noises like she did in the old neighborhood, and when she ran into her classroom and turned to wave, her smile was bright and unburdened. Harper watched her, swallowed by a swell of gratitude that tightened her throat. On her way to Caldwell Tech, Harper no longer walked with the same dread she had carried through her first week. She was still nervous, still shy, but she had somewhere safe to return to now. No broken door, no sour smell, no child curled up on a sagging mattress. And deep inside, Harper knew that only one person had created the chance for everything to begin changing. What she didn't know was that that same morning, from the 26th floor, Ethan saw her walk into the building, looking tidier, less frail, with a calmer light in her eyes. And in that moment, he realized he was witnessing something rare in his meticulously controlled life, a quiet rebirth. Harper Lane, the woman who had collapsed on an airport floor not long ago, was slowly reclaiming her life quietly, steadily, in a way that mirrored the strength at her core. Harper and Mia's new life in apartment 2B gradually settled into a kind of stability Harper had never dared to imagine. Each morning she walked Mia to school, then headed to Caldwell Tech with a lighter heart than she had in months, though what unsettled her most was not the change within herself but the quiet, unwavering way Ethan Caldwell kept slipping into their lives, not loudly, not intrusively, simply appearing at the exact moments they needed someone most. It began on a rainy afternoon when Harper was stuck at work reviewing end-of-day reports, and her phone buzzed with a call from Mia's teacher. "Harper, I'm sorry to bother you, but it seems Mia's father came to pick her up early." Harper jolted so hard she almost dropped the stack of documents. "Her father?" "No, no one. but her voice was cut off by the sound of a child behind the teacher. "Mom, I'm in Mr. Ethan's car." Harper froze. "Mia, where are you?" "I'm in his car. He told me to wear my hood because it's raining." Harper spun around, her heart hammering. "Ethan, is that you?" His familiar deep voice came through. "Yes, I picked her up. It's pouring out here, and her teacher called me because you hadn't arrived. I figured it was better to take her home first." Harper closed her eyes and exhaled slowly to steady herself. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," Ethan said gently, "but I didn't want her standing in the rain." When Harper got home, Ethan was kneeling at the doorway, untying Mia's wet shoes and sliding warm, dry socks onto her small feet. Mia beamed when she saw her mother. "Mom, Mr. Ethan can tie shoelaces in 2 different ways." Harper stood at the threshold, her heart softening with every breath. Ethan looked up and met her eyes. "I was just passing by." But the truth was that nothing about the route from Caldwell Tech to Mia's school was anywhere near passing by. That was the first time. After that, things began happening with such natural ease that they nearly became routine. One evening, Harper came home to find a basket under the kitchen counter filled with tools, screwdrivers, tape, nails, and a brand new hammer with a note attached. "I noticed the bedroom door hinge is sagging. I'll stop by tomorrow night if you don't mind." Harper stared at the note, her hands trembling because she had never known anyone who paid attention to the small broken pieces of her life. The next night, Ethan did come. He removed the door, adjusted the hinge, tightened each screw. Mia sat beside him, wide-eyed. "Mr. Ethan is really good at this." Ethan chuckled softly, the gentle kind of laugh Harper never saw from him at work. "Just a few small fixes." When he stood, Harper noticed sawdust on his sleeve. "You don't need to do these things." Ethan glanced up, his eyes steady and warm. "Harper, if you want me to stop, you only have to say so." Harper opened her mouth, but no words came out because the truth was she didn't want him to stop. A week later, Harper was startled when the school sent a notice saying, "Mia's class fund has been paid by her parent." Harper rushed to the school. "Which parent? I didn't pay anything." The teacher smiled. "The tall gentleman. He said he was a family friend." Harper knew exactly who it was. She marched straight to Caldwell Tech and found Ethan. He was in a meeting and glanced at her through the glass, lifting a brow. Harper crossed her arms, trying to look stern but sounding small despite her best effort. "You paid Mia's class fund?" "Yes," Ethan replied as calmly as if he had reported a quarterly earnings metric. "Why?" Ethan set his pen down and studied her. "Because you're trying to handle everything alone." Harper shook her head, a weak laugh escaping her though her eyes stung. "I don't want you to take care of so much, Harper," Ethan said softly. "Helping isn't the same as controlling. I'm not interfering in your life. I'm just here when you need someone." And Harper knew he meant every word. Not once had he pushed her, demanded gratitude, or tried to steer her choices. He simply appeared, then stepped back just far enough, like the night Mia spiked a fever in the rain. Harper panicked, unsure whether she should rush Mia to the hospital. Her phone buzzed. 3 words. "I'm on my way." When Ethan arrived, rain soaked into his coat, but his steady presence calmed her storm instantly. Mia's illness turned out to be only a seasonal cold, and Harper exhaled with relief while Ethan stood beside her, his hand hovering at her back like an invisible anchor. That night, after Harper tucked Mia into bed and turned to find Ethan still standing at the doorway, she no longer tried to hide the gratitude trembling in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Ethan nodded. "No need to thank me, just let me help." And then he left, leaving Harper standing there with a feeling that was both warm and dangerous. In the days that followed, Ethan's presence in their lives no longer felt unusual. It wasn't love. It wasn't family. It was simply a man who was always there, steady, grounded, and quiet, in a way that made Harper realize she had begun to lean on him without even noticing. And she had no idea that for Ethan, stepping into their lives wasn't obligation or pity. It was something he had chosen completely, slowly, quietly, just as every important thing in his life tended to begin. A biting autumn wind swept through Seattle from late afternoon into the night, rattling the windows of apartment 2B like urgent knocks. Harper stood by the window with a warm cup of tea in her hands, watching the dry leaves swirl violently in the courtyard below, Mia asleep in the small bedroom, her breathing soft and even. The apartment was so quiet Harper could hear her own heartbeat, pulsing with worries she had no words for and feelings growing too quickly for her to confront. Her phone buzzed. A message. "You forgot your jacket at work." Harper glanced at the thin jacket hanging by the door. She started typing a reply when a knock sounded. 3 taps light but certain. Harper opened the door, and Ethan stood there in the cold night air, his long coat buttoned up, his dark hair ruffled by the sharp wind. He wasn't wet, but the chill radiating from the outside air made his presence feel intense. "It's freezing out here," he said simply, as if that explained why he was standing at her door past 9. Harper blinked. "You brought me a coat? If you get sick, Mia will panic. I don't want that happening." His voice was steady, almost matter-of-fact. Harper stepped aside. Ethan didn't step forward. He simply handed her the coat and stepped back half a pace. "I'm fine," she murmured. "You said the same thing the night you insisted you didn't need to stay in the hospital," Ethan replied, raising a brow. Harper took the coat, warmth from his hand still lingering. "Thank you, really." Ethan looked at her for a long moment, watching the wind tug at a loose strand of her hair. "Harper," he said softly, "you don't have to carry everything alone." She lowered her gaze. "I don't want to depend on anyone." Ethan tilted his head slightly. Depending on someone and not fighting alone aren't the same thing. His words caught somewhere deep inside her. She looked away, out at the dark, windy street. "I'm used to handling everything myself, Ethan. But you're not alone anymore," he said, his voice dipping one note lower. Harper's grip tightened on the coat. She drew a breath. "You're right. But I don't want Mia to get her hopes up, or for me to get hopes. That shouldn't exist." Ethan went very still. The wind howled around the building, drowning the world in sound. Then, slowly, he reached forward, gently adjusting the collar of the coat he had given her. Harper shivered. The space between them narrowed. Ethan spoke so quietly only she could hear. "Harper, I didn't come here to complicate your life. I just wanted you warm." Harper looked up, her eyes meeting his steady deep. Her heartbeat echoed loud in her ears. Ethan inhaled sharply, before stepping back a controlled retreat. "I should go," he said, his voice low but unwavering. "Lock your door." Harper nodded. "Thank you." Ethan turned and walked into the windy night, his steps firm. Harper stood in the doorway long after he disappeared. That night, when she finally closed the door and leaned back against it, she realized her heart had slipped. Seattle had one of its rare sunny weekends, and Mia darted around the apartment from the moment she woke, clutching a small bag filled with cookies and a juice box Harper had packed for their picnic. Harper tried to keep calm, but every time her mind drifted back to that moment, under the rain-soaked awning, Ethan standing close enough that she could hear his breath, her heart stumbled wildly. She kept telling herself, "Today is just a simple outing, nothing more, something for Mia, nothing else." But when Ethan appeared at the door wearing a soft gray shirt, and that quiet smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, Harper knew there was nothing simple about any of this. "Ready?" he asked, kneeling to retie Mia's shoelaces as if it were something he had done 100 times. Mia nodded so hard her curls bounced. "Let's go, Mr. Ethan. I want to see the lake. And the ducks." Harper smiled, but her nerves fluttered like wings trapped in her chest. They went to Seward Park, a place Harper had dreamed of taking Mia but never had the means to. By midday, the park shimmered under the sunlight, with cool breezes sweeping in from Lake Washington. Ethan spread a blanket under a large tree, Harper set the food down, and Mia chased pigeons with gleeful shrieks. Ethan sat beside Harper, leaving just enough space to be polite, yet close enough that the warmth from him made her fingers tighten around the food containers. "You look uncomfortable," he murmured. Harper lowered her head, pretending to search for something in the basket. "I'm just not used to this." "Used to what?" She said nothing. Ethan tilted his head, his gaze softening. "Harper, it's just a picnic. Nothing binding, nothing more than what you want it to be." "I know," she whispered, "but with you, nothing ever feels like just nothing." Ethan paused at that, the honesty in her words landing between them like a delicate truth neither had dared to name. Then he gave a faint smile. "Then let it be whatever feels normal to you." Harper looked up at him, and his eyes held no pressure, no expectation, only a quiet patience she had never once been given in her life. They ate under the shade, the breeze lifting strands of Harper's hair. Mia chattered through lunch about school, friends, and a playground drama only a 6-year-old could make sound urgent. Ethan listened with complete seriousness, as if he were attending the most important meeting of his career. Watching them together softened something deep in Harper's chest, something she'd been holding rigid for years. After they finished eating, Mia ran toward a nearby play area. Harper stood to collect the containers while Ethan folded the blanket. "Harper," he said softly, "you've been avoiding looking at me all morning." She froze, fingers tightening around a plastic lid. I'm just... Ethan stepped closer, slowly, like someone approaching a frightened animal he didn't want to startle. "Is it because of that night in the rain?" Harper's breath hitched. "Nothing happened that night." "That's true," Ethan nodded gently. "But it also wasn't nothing." Her pulse stuttered. Ethan moved half a step closer, close enough to feel, not close enough to touch. "Harper, I didn't hold back that night because I didn't want to touch you." Her eyes shot to his. "Ethan, I held back because I respect you. And because I knew that if I crossed that line too soon, you'd run." Harper did step back this time just an inch, but not from fear of him, from fear of herself. Ethan saw it, and immediately stopped. He didn't follow. He didn't push. His voice was almost a whisper. "Harper, I will never be someone you feel unsafe with." Her hands trembled, curling into themselves. I don't know what to do with this." "You don't have to do anything," Ethan replied, his voice dropping to that intimate low tone that made her breath unsteady. "Just let yourself feel what you feel." Those words pulled her into a strange, suspended quiet. She inhaled slowly and looked up at him. His eyes were warm, deep, full of unspoken things. And then, without warning, without intention, simply born from a moment too real to fight, Ethan reached up and brushed a loose lock of hair from her cheek. His fingertip grazed her skin, light as a spark, and Harper shivered. She did not pull away. Ethan leaned in, slow enough that she could stop him at any point. She didn't. His lips touched hers, soft, warm, careful, full of the restraint of a man who had waited far too long to allow himself this one small thing. Harper trembled, feeling the world tilt beneath her feet. One heartbeat, two, and then she broke away, gasping as if waking from a dream too beautiful to trust. I can't." Harper stepped back, covering her mouth, breath coming unevenly. Ethan stayed perfectly still, not reaching for her, though worry flickered through his eyes. "Harper, I'm sorry. I shouldn't let this happen." "Shouldn't because who says so?" Ethan asked quietly. "Because I say so." Harper turned and walked quickly toward Mia, toward safety, toward distance, toward the one place her heart wasn't so exposed. Ethan stood beneath the tree, hands closing into fists at his sides, watching her retreat. He didn't regret the kiss, but for the first time in years, he felt fear that he had stirred something in Harper she had kept buried deep, and that to reach her heart, he would have to confront everything she was running from. Ethan Caldwell had never backed down from a challenge in his life, but Harper Lane, with her trembling lips, her frightened eyes, and her flight away from something she clearly felt might be the hardest challenge he had ever faced. When Harper carried Mia out of the park, her breath was still unsteady, her lips still warm where Ethan's brief, trembling kiss had not yet faded. She didn't look at him, didn't dare turn back, afraid that just one glance would undo whatever fragile strength she had left to walk away. She tried to keep her voice steady as she helped Mia into the back seat, but her hands shook so badly she missed the seatbelt buckle 3 times before getting it right. On the drive home, her heart pounded not because of the kiss, but because memories she had buried deep were breaking through like a tide crashing against old rocks, dragging her back to the darkest chapter of her life. It was 7 years earlier, when Harper was a 22-year-old cashier at a small grocery store in Tacoma. She had loved Evan handsome, smooth-talking, always promising a future full of riches he never had the discipline to build. When Harper found out she was pregnant, she spent weeks gathering enough courage to tell him. That evening, rain poured as though the sky were collapsing, and she stood in front of his run-down apartment door with a trembling hand over her stomach, her heart beating fast with fear and fragile hope. Evan opened the door, the smell of cigarettes and cheap beer spilling out. Harper gave him a thin smile and whispered, "I have something important to tell you." But before she could say anything else, he sighed in annoyance and tossed his jacket onto the sofa. "You need money again?" Harper shook her head, her eyes already burning. "I'm pregnant." She remembered the exact moment Evan froze for 3 seconds, then burst out laughing as if she had told a joke. "You're kidding, right?" But when Harper did not smile, the amusement died instantly in his eyes, replaced by irritation, then contempt. "Don't drag me into this, Harper. I'm not ready. I have my whole life ahead of me." She stood there, rainwater mixing with tears running down her cheeks, her voice breaking. "Evan, I need you. I thought you loved me." Evan turned away, grabbing clothes from the closet and stuffing them into a bag. Harper panicked. "Evan, what are you doing?" He didn't look at her. His voice was a cold blade. "I'm not being a dad, Harper. Don't trap me." He left the city before she could understand what had happened, leaving her alone in the storm, arms wrapped around her stomach, the world crumbling beneath her feet. In those months, she lost her job because of severe morning sickness, got evicted from her apartment for unpaid rent, and ended up in a damp, tiny room in Rainier Valley. She survived on extra shifts, the kindness of strangers, and her own tired hands. No one loved her without conditions. No one caught her when she fell. No one kept their promises. No one except Mia, the child who grew inside her when she had nothing else to hold on to. Harper glanced into the rearview mirror and saw Mia softly singing some little song, completely peaceful, completely untouched by the storms that shaped her mother. The old pain tightened around Harper's chest like a cold fist. She had vowed to herself that she would never again depend on a man. She would never let her heart be crushed because she trusted the wrong person. Dependence brought destruction. Trust brought abandonment. Love brought loss. She repeated those truths to herself for 3 years, building a wall so thick not even warmth could slip through. And yet Ethan, with his steady eyes and gentle touch, with a kiss soft as a passing breeze, was chipping away at that wall piece by piece. Back at the new apartment, Harper let Mia run to her toys. She leaned against the doorframe, her fingers lifting to her lips, the ghost of that kiss still there. She remembered Ethan's eyes, no demand, no urgency, only the quiet admission that he wanted her, but would stop the second she stepped back. Harper hated that. Hated how his respect made it dangerously easy to trust him. Hated that he wasn't like any man she had ever known. Hated that her heart was betraying her logic. She closed her eyes and exhaled shakily. She knew why she panicked, because if she ever allowed herself to love Ethan Caldwell, she would lose everything she had fought to build her independence, her control, her safety. And if he ever left, this time, she would not survive it. Harper sank onto the living room floor, holding her head, her breath breaking in quiet, uneven waves, unaware that not far below, Ethan was still standing in the courtyard, staring up at her window. His heart weighed down. He understood she was running from something, but he had not realized how monstrous those shadows were. And what hurt him most was this: he didn't know if he was enough to erase the wounds another man had carved into her. Ethan stood there for a long time, long enough for his jacket to ripple in the wind and a few passers-by to turn and stare. He didn't look away from the faint strip of amber light spilling from Harper's window. He knew she was avoiding him. He knew why. What he didn't know was whether he could heal someone so deeply scarred. When he returned to Mercer Tower, his penthouse felt even quieter, the sound of the key turning in the lock echoing like an impact against his ribs. Ethan tossed his coat onto the sofa, removed his watch, and stared out at the city rain-slicked streets, couples walking beneath umbrellas, little shops glowing with warm yellow light. Since meeting Harper, this silence had become unbearably cold. He sat down, fingers curling into fists, and for the first time in years, the memory returned sharp, vivid, merciless. 3 years earlier, Ethan had still believed in love in the old-fashioned way. Work hard, be kind, love deeply, and you would be loved in return. Julia, his fiancée back then, was the woman he thought he'd spend his life with. Their wedding plans were set, invitations sent. Even the house they hoped to renovate for future children had been chosen. Ethan then was not the guarded CEO Harper knew now. He was a gentle software engineer who wore glasses, laughed easily, and had no idea how cruel the world could be. One winter evening, he came home early with a bouquet of white tulips, Julia's favorite. He remembered being so excited he forgot to close the car door. He was going to propose that night with a ring he had saved for months. But when he opened the apartment door, he heard soft laughter, hurried footsteps, whispered voices. Julia was standing in the living room, her blouse half-buttoned, and beside her was a man zipping up his pants, Ethan's closest friend, a former colleague, someone he had loved like a brother. They stared at him as if he were the intruder. Julia panicked, offering a stream of excuses about stress and boredom, and Ethan, not being exciting anymore. His friend stammered apologies he didn't mean. Ethan walked out quietly, letting them say whatever they wanted to each other. That night, he sat for hours on the cold sand at Alki Beach, watching waves roll in and erase themselves. Something inside him died there, the part that believed in kindness, in devotion, in lasting love. He became quieter, colder. He buried himself in work and built Caldwell Tech like a fortress around his broken trust. Then one morning, a 6-year-old girl grabbed his hand, and her mother, Harper Lane, walked into his life like a crack in the armor he had forged. The next day at Caldwell Tech, Harper avoided looking at him. She moved as if afraid of breathing the same air. At the end of the day, she asked to leave early to pick up Mia, but rain suddenly began to fall. When she reached the parking garage, Ethan was already there, holding an umbrella open. Harper hesitated. Ethan's voice was quiet. "Harper, I want to explain." "No need," she murmured. "Yesterday, I overreacted." Ethan shook his head. "No, Harper. You reacted like someone who has been deeply hurt." Harper looked down, clutching the strap of her bag. Ethan inhaled slowly, and for the first time in his life, he told a woman other than his therapist, "Julia betrayed me the night before I was going to propose." Harper's head snapped up, eyes widening. Ethan continued, his voice low. "That night, I lost my belief in anything called love. I closed myself off. I didn't want anyone near me again." The wind seemed to pause. Harper said nothing, but her eyes softened in a way that made Ethan want to reach for her. "But then you appeared," he said. "You and Mia. You two made me do things I didn't think I was capable of anymore." Ethan paused, his heart pounding. Harper whispered, "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I want you to know I'm not drawn to you out of pity. I'm drawn to you because I see pieces of myself in you. Wounds only someone who's lived them can recognize." Rain pattered gently on Harper's hair as her eyes softened, and Ethan almost stepped forward to hold her. But she took one step back, her voice trembling. "Ethan, I'm not sure I can love anyone anymore." Ethan studied her for a long moment, then said softly, "Then let me be the one who learns how to love you first." And in that moment, in the gray rain of the parking lot, beneath the warm flicker of a street lamp reflected in the wet pavement, Harper Lane had no idea that her wound had just touched his, and that instead of pushing them apart, their two broken histories were drawing them closer than either had ever dared to imagine. Harper barely slept that night. Ethan's words echoed in her mind, one by one, quiet yet deep, like raindrops disturbing the still surface of a lake. She tried to focus on anything else, work, bills, Mia's snack list, but every time she closed her eyes, she saw his expression as he spoke about his own pain, saw the raw honesty that unsettled her more than the kiss ever did. The next morning, as Harper was getting Mia ready for school, her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. She hesitated, then answered. "Harper?" A woman's voice, husky, trembling. It's your mother." Harper froze, the phone turning cold in her hand. She must have misheard. She hadn't heard that woman's voice in 17 years. Her mother had vanished from her life as if she had never existed. "I want to see you, if you're willing." Harper hung up with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. Mia tugged at her, asking questions, but Harper simply pulled her close, trying to steady her breath. That evening, after dropping Mia at the neighbor's, Harper took a ride-share to the address the woman had given, an old apartment in the outskirts of Kent, wedged between half-dilapidated buildings. She stood at the door for a few seconds, inhaled deeply, and knocked. The door opened slightly. A woman with prematurely graying hair, sunken cheeks, and tired eyes with a trace of familiarity that made Harper's throat tighten. "Harper, you've grown so much." Harper didn't move. The word mother shattered on her tongue like a foreign object. She didn't know what to call this woman. They sat at a small wooden table with a faded cloth. 2 cups of tea. Harper didn't touch hers. The woman stared at her for a long time, as if searching her face for remnants of the child she left behind. "I know you didn't want to see me. I know I don't deserve it." Harper's voice was calm, so calm it hurt. "What do you want?" The woman lowered her head, hands twisting together. "I'm sorry. For everything." Harper let out a small, broken laugh she didn't recognize as her own. What apology covers 13 years? What apology covers the nights a 12-year-old girl cooked for herself, took her own medicine when she was sick, or ran from drunk landlords by herself? You left. No explanation, no coming back. The woman trembled, eyes reddening. "You're right. I left you. I should have stayed. But I wasn't fit to raise you. I wasn't stable." Harper's voice sharpened. "Because of alcohol? Because of men?" The woman went quiet, then whispered, "Because I was afraid of myself." Harper paused. The woman spoke again, halting, fragile. She told her that when Harper was little, she suffered from severe depression, lost jobs constantly, and clung to toxic relationships. She loved Harper, but every time she looked at her, she saw her own failures reflected back. And when Harper's father left, something in her broke beyond repair. "I thought, if I stayed, I would take you down with me," she whispered. Harper felt her chest twist, a painful, squeezing ache. The woman cried softly, her voice splitting. "I never wanted to abandon you. I was just too weak." Harper wanted to yell, to rage, to say she had endured enough pain for a lifetime. But looking at that woman older, worn, haunted, Harper realized there were wounds worse than being left behind, living for decades with the weight of what you'd done. She kept her voice cold but lowered it. "Why call me now? I heard. You were hurt at the airport. Someone saw Mia asking for help. I know I have no place in your life, but I needed to know you were alive, that you're okay." Harper swallowed tightly. The woman looked at her with hollow eyes, holding a tiny flicker of hope. "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted to see you once, to know you're standing, to know you didn't become like me." Harper rose slowly, her heart aching as though someone was pulling apart memories she had locked away. "You don't need to worry about my life. I've taken care of it myself." The woman nodded, tears slipping down but wearing a small, relieved smile, not painful, not pleading, just free. "I know. You're stronger than I ever was, stronger than I ever dreamed." Harper reached for the door, her mind a storm, when she heard a soft call behind her. "Harper, don't be afraid to love someone. Don't repeat my mistakes." Harper froze. That sentence struck her like the final blow, cracking open everything she had locked tight for years. She walked out without looking back, her vision blurring with each step. She didn't know if her mother said those words because she saw fear in Harper's eyes, or because she sensed the man named Ethan Caldwell, who was making Harper's heart tremble in ways she could no longer control. But as she stepped into the night and the cold wind swept through her hair, Harper understood that her fear of love didn't come only from Evan. It came from her childhood, from a mother who ran from love and dragged her into that darkness. And for the first time, Harper wondered, if she kept running, was she becoming the very woman she once resented? Harper returned home after nightfall, thin trails of rain sweeping across the street like mist. She closed the door quietly, as if afraid a louder sound would shatter the fragile stillness inside her chest. Mia was asleep at the neighbors, hugging her stuffed bear, untouched by the hurt her mother was trying so hard to swallow. Harper walked to the window and placed a hand over her heart, still aching but no longer chaotic. The encounter had drained her, but it had also opened a strange crack, a crack where a sliver of light could slip in, though she wasn't sure she wanted it to widen. Then came a knock, soft, hesitant, exactly like the man she'd been trying to avoid but couldn't stop thinking about. Harper opened the door. Ethan stood there without an umbrella, shirt soaked, hair tousled from the rain, breath uneven as if he had run the whole way. His eyes found hers unshielded, unfiltered, full of worry so intense it made her own heart tighten. "Harper," he exhaled, voice rougher than usual. "Are you okay?" She wanted to say yes, to say the meeting with her mother didn't affect him, that she was strong enough on her own. But seeing him like that, drenched, breathless, bracing the doorway as if ready to carry the world for her, every practiced word dissolved. Ethan saw the exhaustion in her eyes and stepped inside when she moved aside. She leaned against the closed door while he stood in the small living room, this powerful man suddenly looking lost because of her. "You disappeared all day," Ethan said quietly. "I was worried." Harper gave a worn-out smile. "I just met someone," she whispered. "Someone I didn't think I'd ever see again." Ethan understood instantly. She didn't need to name the person. He asked only one question, gentle as thread. Did it hurt? Harper drew a shaky breath. Yes, she whispered. But I think I needed to hear what she had to say. I needed to know why. Ethan moved closer, stopping just half a step from her. He didn't touch her, only stood close enough for her to feel his warmth. Ethan, Harper whispered, I don't know what to do with all of this. He looked at her for a long moment, eyes softening as if he were holding something fragile with both hands. When he spoke, his voice was low, steady, and life-changing. Harper, I didn't come here to make things harder. I came because I can't stay away anymore. Her heart clenched. Ethan inhaled deeply, gathering a courage he no longer wanted to hide. Harper, from the day at the airport, when Mia ran up and grabbed my hand, something shifted in me. You walked into my life like fate. Harper's breath caught, not because the words were beautiful, but because they were true. Ethan stepped closer, warmth radiating between them, shrinking the world until only their breaths existed. I don't know how much your heart has endured, but I know that fear. I lived in it for 3 years. And the only thing that pulled me out was you. Harper trembled, fingers clenched in her shirt, as if holding herself back from falling. Ethan, I don't love you because you need me, he murmured. I love you because you are strong in ways that make me want to be a better man. I love you because of Aster. Mia, because of your smile, because you keep looking at life with courage, even after being abandoned. Harper closed her eyes as tears spilled. Don't, she whispered. I'm scared. Ethan lifted his hand but stopped right before touching her cheek, as if the slightest pressure might send her running again. I don't want you afraid. I just want you to know. I'm here. I'm not leaving. I won't disappear. I won't step back, just because you're hurting. Harper opened her eyes. The sound of rain faded, leaving only their 2 heartbeats in the small room. Ethan's voice dropped to a near whisper. You don't have to open your heart again. Just let me stand at the door, waiting. She stared at him, fighting herself, her past, her fear. Then she took one small step forward, one step that brought their breaths together. Ethan stiffened slightly, stunned she was allowing him closer. Harper lifted her hand and laid it on his chest, feeling his heartbeat pounding through his rain-soaked shirt. Ethan, she said, voice fragile but warm. I don't know if I can love the way I used to, but I want to try. Ethan's entire body seemed to light from within. He gently held her hand against his heart, his eyes deep with gratitude. Harper Lane, he whispered, I won't hurt you. Harper broke into tears, not from despair, but from hope. Ethan drew her into his arms slowly, reverently, as if holding something sacred. Harper let herself lean into him, into the warmth, the heartbeat, the safety she had never allowed herself to believe in. In his embrace, she understood she had done something terrifying, she had opened a door, but she also knew something even stronger than fear. Ethan was loving her with everything he had. And for the first time in years, Harper did not want to run anymore. Everything began just 3 days after Harper allowed herself to open her heart to Ethan. They hadn't defined anything, hadn't named whatever it was growing between them, hadn't crossed any boundary beyond that deep, lingering embrace in the rain. But inside, Harper, something had shifted. She felt lighter, safer, and for the first time in years, she woke without the sense that the world was about to crumble on top of her. But the peace lasted only until Monday morning, when Harper walked into Caldwell Tech with a warm cup of coffee in hand. People stared at her not with the idle curiosity she had endured weeks earlier, but with sharp, whispering looks laced with malice. Harper froze as if suddenly exposed to the cold Seattle wind without her coat. She hurried to her desk, opened her computer, and pretended not to notice. But her inbox was already flooded with more than 20 emails, all with the same subject line. Have you seen this? Harper clicked the link. Her blood turned to ice. A gossip article from a tabloid obsessed with wealthy scandals. CEO Ethan Caldwell getting close to a new female employee? Sources claim the young woman has a chaotic past and was abandoned by her boyfriend while pregnant. The article was filled with half-truths twisted into something poisonous. They didn't name Harper, but they didn't need to. Everyone in the company knew exactly who it was. Attached was a blurry photo. Ethan holding an umbrella over Harper in the parking lot. The angle made it look intimate, secretive, like a successful man shielding his hidden lover. Harper dropped the mouse, her heart pounding so violently her stomach twisted, as if someone were wringing it with their fists. Her mother's words from the night before crashed back into her. Don't be afraid to love. Don't repeat my mistakes. But now, Harper felt the world was reminding her she had no business loving anyone at all. A female coworker walked by and said loudly enough for Harper to hear, "Sleeping with the boss must guarantee job security." Heat flushed Harper's ears. Her hands clenched so tightly her nails dug into her palms. She fled to the restroom, locked the door, and leaned over the sink as tears spilled onto her shirt. Everything she had been trying so hard to build, her stability, her job, the fragile hope she barely dared to touch, felt like a tower collapsing under its own weight. She feared Ethan would be angry. She feared Mia would be dragged into this. She feared her past, her worst wounds would be laid out as entertainment for strangers. Minutes later, her phone buzzed. "Where are you, Ethan?" Harper stared at the screen through a blur of tears. No. She couldn't face him. She couldn't drag him into the storm that felt like her fault. She wiped her face and typed, "I need time." Ethan replied almost instantly, "I'm coming." Harper panicked and typed quickly, "No, please, don't come." He didn't respond. Harper returned to her desk. The stares remained sharp, mocking, hungry. She forced her trembling fingers to work through a report, mistyping words over and over. Then she heard footsteps, familiar, steady, unhurried, but they silenced the entire floor. Ethan stepped into the open workspace. His expression was so cold the air itself seemed to contract. His assistant trailed behind him, speaking rapidly, but Ethan lifted a hand and she fell silent. He looked around the room once, eyes like steel. "Who started this?" His voice was low, controlled, and dangerous enough to freeze every moving thing in the office. No one dared speak. Ethan turned to her, worry flickering under the icy surface. "Harper, come with me." She shook her head, barely audible. "No, I don't want it to get worse. Come with me," he repeated, softer but with something in his tone she couldn't refuse. She stood on unsteady legs. He led her to an empty conference room and closed the door behind them. "Harper, I'm sorry," he said. "Let me handle this." She shook her head, voice breaking. "It's not your fault. It's me, my past. People will think. I don't care what they think. They'll drag you down," she whispered. "They'll use my past to destroy you." Ethan stepped closer, his voice dropping into a tone that sank straight into her bones. "Harper, I choose you. Not the public, not the press, not bored people who enjoy tearing others apart." Harper broke, turning her face away in shame. "I can't stand the thought of you getting dragged through the mud because of me." Ethan tilted her chin gently, forcing her to meet his gaze. "You're not pulling me down. You're making me want to stand taller so I can shield you." Her eyes squeezed shut as a tear fell onto his hand. "Ethan, I'm scared." "I know," he murmured. "But you're not alone." Outside the conference room, the media released more articles, photos of Harper's old apartment, fabricated stories of her targeting wealthy men, accusations of gold digging, claims that Ethan had been seduced. Harper read every line, feeling her past rising like a dark tide ready to swallow her all over again. And for the first time since Evan, since the night she cried clutching her pregnant belly alone, Harper felt a fierce longing to lean on someone, to be protected, to believe someone could stand with her even when the world turned its back. That someone was Ethan Caldwell. But she had no idea how big the next shadow would grow, or whether the fragile love taking shape between them could survive the storm gathering outside. The next morning, Harper arrived at work earlier than usual. No one blocked her path, no one spoke, but every stare hooked into her like sharp claws. She walked straight to her desk, opened her computer, and took a long breath as if preparing for one final battle. She knew she couldn't stay, not because she was weak, not because she was afraid, but because this would destroy Ethan far more than it would destroy her. At 8:30, Harper typed her resignation, fingers trembling so hard the letters blurred. She gave no explanation, no mention of the rumors, just one simple line, "I resign effective today." She printed it, signed it, and placed it on her manager's desk. Then she cleared her personal emails, cleaned her workspace, and wrapped Mia's little sun-shaped ceramic mug in a tissue. She held it for a moment, then tucked it away. When she stood up to leave, the office speakers crackled. The assistant's voice echoed sharply. All staff, please report to the 5th floor atrium immediately. This is an urgent announcement from the executive team. Only one person had the authority to issue something like that. Ethan. Harper froze. No. She couldn't face him. She couldn't make this worse. She slipped out the back, taking the emergency stairs. Her shoes clanged against metal as she rushed down, breath uneven, heart breaking with every step. She didn't look back. Outside, she pulled her coat tight and disappeared into the crowded morning traffic, vanishing from Caldwell Tech as if she had never been there at all. Meanwhile, on the 5th floor, Ethan stood before hundreds of employees buzzing with anxious speculation. His face was stone, his eyes sharp with a fury no one dared meet head-on. "The article this morning," Ethan announced, his voice ringing like metal striking rock, "is trash, completely fabricated. Anyone circulating it within this company will be terminated immediately." Silence fell like a heavy curtain. As for Har, he stopped, his throat tightening as he attempted to speak her name. "Miss Lane has not arrived today. All assistants, contact her immediately. I want confirmation she is safe," a man whispered. "She already submitted her resignation, sir." Ethan snapped toward him, his gaze so sharp the man recoiled. "Where is it?" "In her manager's office, but she already left the building." Ethan said nothing. He turned and stormed down the hallway, ignoring every voice behind him. He stabbed the elevator button, then abandoned it and sprinted down the stairs 3 flights in mere seconds. Outside, he scanned the street, but saw only strangers, buses, and the endless, indifferent movement of the city. "No, Harper," he called her. Once, twice, 10 times. Only the cold recording answered. "The number you are trying to reach is unavailable." Ethan clenched his jaw, climbed into his car, and said through gritted teeth, "Seward Park, now." The vehicle shot forward, weaving through morning traffic. Ethan leaned back, his fists tight enough for veins to stand out. Not good. Harper was not the type to disappear for no reason. Not unless she was in so much pain she couldn't bear to be seen. Or worse, unless she believed that leaving him was the only way to protect him. That thought crushed his chest like a blow. When the car reached the building, a new apartment building, Ethan jumped out before it fully stopped. He ran to apartment 2B and pounded on the door. No answer. He knocked again, and again. By the 5th try, he pressed his ear to the wood, desperate for any sound from Mia. But the silence was absolute. Ethan felt madness rising. He turned to leave, ready to search the entire city, ready to call the police if he had to when his phone vibrated. The caller ID, Mia. Ethan answered instantly. The little girl's voice was broken, trembling so hard he felt it like a knife. "Uncle Ethan, where's my mom? I can't find her. She's gone." Ethan froze. All sound in the world fell away. Only the terrified sobs of a 6-year-old filled the air. "Mia, listen to me," Ethan said softly, steadily, as if his voice were the only rope keeping her from falling apart. "Where are you right now?" "At Aunt Emily's. She picked me up from school. Mom didn't come." Ethan closed his eyes. Harper missing her pickup time could only mean she was shattered beyond functioning. "Mia, stay right there. I'm coming. You're safe." "I promise," Mia cried harder. "Uncle Ethan, I'm scared. Mom always picks me up. She never leaves me." Ethan swallowed hard, fighting the crack in his own voice. "Listen to me, sweetheart. Your mom didn't leave you. She's just hurting right now. But I'm going to find her. Do you understand? I will bring her back. Do you really promise?" "I promise with everything I have." Ethan ran down the stairs like a man possessed, yanked open the car door and ordered, "Emily's house." Then every place in Seattle she could possibly be. Every camera, every street, every route, check them all. His face was no longer that of a controlled executive or a measured man. He was someone terrified to the point of unraveling, terrified of losing the woman whose heart he had just begun to touch, terrified of breaking a promise to the little girl crying into the phone. And as the car tore through the gray afternoon light, Ethan Caldwell understood one thing with absolute clarity. He could not let Harper disappear from his life. Not this time. Not ever again. Ethan drove with a white-knuckled grip toward the one place he hoped she might go, the place where he had seen her truly smile for the first time, Seward Park. The sun had already dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky a bruised purple and gray. The wind off Lake Washington was fierce, whipping the water into choppy waves. And there she was. Harper sat on the same bench near the water where they had watched Mia play, her knees pulled to her chest, staring out at the darkening lake as if looking for an answer in the depths. Ethan stopped the car and ran toward her, his footsteps crunching on the gravel path. "Harper!" she startled, turning around. Her eyes were red and swollen, but dry now. She looked small against the vastness of the water and the encroaching night. "Ethan," her voice was barely a whisper carried away by the wind. "Why did you come?" "I left so you wouldn't have to deal with the mess of my life." "You are my life," Ethan said, stopping just inches from her, blocking the biting wind with his own body. "I don't care about the rumors. I don't care about the past. Walking away from me doesn't save me, Harper. It destroys me." Harper stood up, shaking her head. "I can't be the reason you lose everything. The press, the company. I'm just a woman with too much baggage. The only way I lose everything is if you leave." Ethan reached out, gripping her shoulders firmly. "Look at me. I'm not standing here because of obligation. I'm here because the thought of waking up tomorrow without you is terrifying." Under the first flickering street lamp of the park, Ethan slowly lowered himself to one knee on the cold ground. It wasn't a desperate plea in a storm. It was a deliberate, steady choice made in the face of uncertainty. He pulled the small velvet box from his pocket. "Harper Lane, I cannot promise that the world will always be kind to us, but I promise that you will never have to face it alone again. Will you marry me? Not for safety, not for protection, but because we choose each other?" Harper pressed a hand to her mouth, tears finally spilling over not from fear, but from relief. The wind howled around them, but in his eyes, she found the only shelter she would ever need. "Ethan," she choked out. I want to. But what? I need something. Something that tells me if everything changes, if you grow tired of me, or leave me, my world won't collapse again." Ethan stayed kneeling, looking up at her with absolute patience. "What do you need?" Harper met his gaze. "I want a prenuptial agreement." Ethan went still. Understanding washed over him. Harper continued, voice quavering but resolute. "I don't want you to think I'm here for money or for status. I want you to know I'm choosing you from the heart. Nothing else. I also need to protect myself. And if you truly love me, you'll understand." Ethan held her gaze for a long moment. Then he smiled a genuine, relieved smile. He stood up, placed both hands on her cheeks, and pressed a vow-like kiss to her forehead. "Harper Lane, I will sign anything you want. A prenup, a postnup, a contract, anything you say. I don't love you because you need me," he whispered against her ear. "I love you because you're strong, because you're you. And if a prenup helps you trust me, I'll sign it today." Harper buried her face against his chest, crying like a child. "Ethan, I'm scared." "I'll be scared with you," he murmured, voice warm in the cold wind. "But I will never leave you." Harper clutched his shirt, her heart finally surrendering to a kind of trust she had never dared to touch. Standing by the lake, wrapped in the arms of the man who had knelt for her, Harper Lane knew she didn't have to run anymore. And Ethan Caldwell understood that this proposal in the twilight, between hurt and hope, was the beginning of his life, not the end of it. After that stormy night, Seattle woke to a morning soft as if newly washed clean. Harper moved to Mercer Island after signing the prenuptial agreement she herself had written, every clause clear and honest, reflecting the independence she had always guarded. Ethan signed without a moment's hesitation. In that absolute respect, Harper's heart finally found a place to rest. Their new home sat beside a quiet lake, the air carrying the scent of fresh pine and wildflowers drifting from the hills. Mia ran through the wide living room, her small feet sinking into the cloud's soft rug, laughing as Ethan lifted her high and spun her around. Harper stood on the staircase looking down, warmth blooming in her chest in a way she still wasn't used to. The years spent running, hiding, curling into herself inside dim rooms in Rainier Valley now felt like memories from another lifetime. She wasn't yet used to this peace. But every morning when she woke to Ethan setting a cup of tea beside her and Mia climbing into bed clutching her stuffed bear, Harper knew she had found the right place to stop. One afternoon, as the sun dipped over the lake like a trail of honey, Harper felt a faint wave of dizziness. At first she thought she had stood too long in the kitchen. But when a soft nausea rose in her throat, she froze, her hand drifting to her abdomen. She counted the days, then counted again. A rush of fear, wonder, and trembling excitement washed through her. She stepped out to the back porch, where Ethan was repairing the little wooden playhouse Mia wanted to turn into her secret room. He looked up the moment he saw her, his eyes always carrying that same quiet certainty, as though seeing her made the world align. Harper took a breath, walked toward him, and clasped his hand, her own shaking. "Ethan," she said softly, unable to hide the shift in her gaze. He set his tools aside at once, concern sharpening his features. "What's wrong?" Harper guided his hand to her belly. "We are going to have a baby." Time seemed to stop. Ethan stood frozen for several seconds, his eyes widening, his breath catching in his throat. Then he tightened his grip on her hand and pulled her into his arms, holding her as if everything he had ever lost had just been restored in a single moment. For a long time he couldn't speak, only pressed his face to her hair, his breath warm and unsteady. "Harper," he finally whispered, his voice rough. "Thank you." Harper let out a watery laugh. "What are you thanking me for? For trusting me, for choosing me, for giving me a family." Mia ran out of the house just then, tilting her head in curiosity at the sight of them holding each other. Ethan scooped her up and placed her small hand on Harper's belly. "You're going to be a big sister." Mia's eyes grew round, her mouth dropping open in awe before she wrapped her arms around Harper as tightly as she could, as though it were the most beautiful secret in the world. In the weeks that followed, their Mercer Island home filled with laughter. Harper learned to trust happiness one small step at a time. Ethan took her to every prenatal appointment, his hand clasped around hers the entire time. Mia whispered stories to the baby each night, tales only a child's imagination could weave. But Harper understood this joy wasn't magic. It was born from a long journey through hurt, trials, loss, and the courage to rise again. What she once believed would destroy her had led her instead to a different life, one where she was seen, loved, and allowed to live the true meaning of peace. Ethan always said fate brought them together at the airport that day. Harper had never believed in destiny, but now, she was beginning to understand that sometimes the most painful moments are the doors that lead to the most beautiful places. And life was still writing pages they had yet to turn. The story of Harper and Ethan reminds us that no one is born to be wounded forever. Everyone deserves the chance to be loved, to be safe, and to choose their life again. Thank you for following this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe, like, and share so we can continue bringing meaningful and inspiring stories each day. What part of Harper and Ethan's journey resonated with you the most? Did you see a piece of yourself in their story? Share your thoughts in the comments. We deeply value hearing the stories that come from your heart. Wishing you good health, a peaceful life, and hope that fills each day. Goodbye for now, and see you in the next video.